that particular style or whatever, and then made my living that way. Now, I still make about one competition piece per year. It's never going to be it's never going to be a best in show, but it gives me the opportunity to say, would you like to see my work? It's going to be traveling, and here's all the places it will be. And so then for those people who are just in general fans of my work, they can go see my quilt somewhere at a quilt show near them. It has helped me get bookings. It has helped me, get Quilt Guild. I do find that I still, again, in the world of quilting, because I'm not somebody who has like 10 books or any books. So whatever, if anyone wants to give me a book contract, I'm totally open to that.
Totally.
But there is some slight recognition where if you're online and you're an online quilter and you're very connected with, Facebook and Instagram and all that, you know me.
Yeah.
If you're not, which a lot of guild members aren't, they have no clue who I am. And when I show up, they're like, oh, she's much younger than we thought she would be. And I end up having this, and I have this sort of like, let me tell you, when I started quilting in 1997, and yes, that was, back when I was a small child, and they laughed, even though I wasn't a small child, they laughed because clearly I couldn't have been quilting since 1997.
Right.
I must only be 20 years old in their eyes. And I get that a lot.
Yeah.
And I do find that sometimes it affects my bookings for classes because I don't have like that top level name recognition.
Interesting.
And sometimes I do. I think a lot of it does come down to the project. So if the guild picks the good project, then I fill the class. If the guild picks one of my little weirder projects, then my classes don't fill up as much.
Yeah.
And I leave it to them to decide. Like, if they want to pick the weird stuff, great. If they want to pick the mainstream stuff, fine. I'm there to pitch all of it. And so, it's really, does it affect my, bookings and attendance? Yeah, I think it does.
That's really interesting.
So if you're very online and very connected, then you know who I am, and it's great. If you are somebody who's like, oh, I don't use Facebook.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, well, then no wonder you don't know who I am.
Right, because you need a book. Because you need a book.
So,
it's all about for that crowd, it's still about probably very traditional mediums of books and things like that.
Yeah.
I would imagine.
Yeah, and I think that's where demographic comes in. That's where, a lot of factors come in, where people are just like, oh, I'm just not good on the internet, so I only go and look and see my grandkids on the Facebook every once in a while. Right. Where other people are like, I have a group of what I call super users, and they're like, I can't put a post out that they don't like within like 5 minutes.
Right.
And, there's a lot of that in the popularity of these big brands, these bigger names.
Yeah.
And they'll get booked.
Right.
They get booked more than I do.
Well, I've got a total idea for you. So I think you probably already do this, but I think what you probably already do this because I am so don't have new ideas. But I think that for the people that don't know you, putting out a book or a thing where it's all about cool quilts for your grandkids would be awesome. The idea that I know you want to make something for your grandkid. How about something that lights up or has a cool robot or whatever? I would imagine that the grandma crowd would be going crazy for your stuff because they want to make stuff for the grandkids, but the grandkids don't really care. So,
well, and I think that it is a matter of oh well, I like them, but they're their stuff is not to my taste.
Right.
And I get that. You know, I'm the one who has a skull for a logo. So, you know, when you have a skull for a logo, you're immediately going to turn off a certain part of the market.
Yeah.
But in my mind, that person was never my customer.
No.
Right? If you're turned off by the idea of a skull on my product line, then I'm not your customer. You're not my customer.
Right, right.
And so I don't spend time worrying about people who are not my demographic.
Yeah.
I did already move my product line around to be more mainstream, about as mainstream as it can be.
Yeah.
But in the end, you know, I know that people still follow me for me.
Yeah.
And so I have to embrace the things that make me me. And if my thing is to make heirloom sewing cool and a little more rock and roll, you know, you could go Martha Pullen's way and, you know, you could be very heirloom traditional, or you could be a little more rock and roll heirloom and do things my way. And that to me is that's the difference.
Yeah. Well, I think your stuff is awesome.
Yeah.
I think, and I think that's true of every quilt. I mean, that's the branding, right? You're not everything to everyone. That's the whole point of branding, is that, you know, you appeal to the people that want, and I mean, that's the essence of branding, right? So that someone who wants, you know, granola versus Lucky Charms knows which brand to get, right? They know what product to get. So, So,
exactly. And there's not always the same customer. Is there the occasional crossover? Sure there is.
Right.
But for the most part, I'm not going to spend my energy going after a Martha Pullen customer because they're going to take one look at me and go, she's a little too out there for me. and I get that.
Yeah.
You know, pink hair and a skull T-shirt probably isn't going to be your thing. And so I think that, you know, I do see that the industry is going to have to open its mind a little bit more. You know, we were talking about that a little bit.
Yeah.
I do think that there's a lot of still traditional values in quilting that we're pushing the boundaries on. That's a tough, that's going to be a tough nut to crack.
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, it is a hobby that automatically skews generationally older.
Yeah. And
it's also a very affluent hobby.
Yeah.
Quilting is very expensive.
Yeah.
And so unlike knitting, where you can go get $1 ball of yarn and a really, you know, $2 pair of sticks, you know, it really isn't that accessible. We're still not cutting up clothing to make quilts.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not for necessity at this point. I do think they make very good post-apocalyptic life skills. I think that
it's so true.
I think that, you know, when we're the only ones who are keeping ourselves warm and clothed, then people, you know where know to keep us alive. That part.
Exactly. It's so true. It's so true. That's so funny.
But I think that, but I do think that, you know, these are the types of things that people lament. Like, oh, grandma was really good at quilting. I wish I learned how to sew from her. And, you know, there's so many of those crafts out there, you know, like chair caning and vegetable canning and rug hooking. And it still exists, but in these very, very small markets, in these very small places, and very few people who are out there saying, I'm going to teach the next generation how to cane a chair.
Yeah.
That's just not a thing. It's certainly not a thing around here in Chicago.
No.
And so you really have to, you know, learn those things from people who are willing to teach it. And the great thing about quilting is there's so many people willing to teach it. And and it is a mainstream enough hobby that it has stores and a culture dedicated to it. So I think we're, again, when I said we were lucky, we are very lucky to be in this day and age.
Well, Cheryl, this has been so awesome, and we got to the first question, so it's really good. We did an hour on the first question.
Well, I guess there has to be a part 3.
I think that would be awesome. Well, I have to tell you, I really, really adore chatting with you. I always feel like I learned so much, and it's really fun. So yeah, let's do a part 3. I think that's great. All right, I'm gonna end the recording. Anything else that we want to say before we end? No.
No.
Okay, good. Okay, cool. Okay, I'm gonna stop all the many recordings of this, and then hold on just a second. So this is Elizabeth Townsend Guard. You've been listening to Just Wanna Quilt, a research podcast coming out of Tulane University Law School. We want to hear from you. Join our army, our quilting army. Go to our Facebook page. Suggest people to be interviewed. Suggest yourself to be interviewed. We are excited to hear from you. But most importantly, I hope you get a chance to quilt today.